There is now evidence that Russia is planning a secret attack on NATO. And obviously, that's concerning because not only are the European countries extremely concerned and they're trying to prepare, but this is also dragging in the United States. Look at this right here. It says Western intelligence have evidence that Russia is discussing a NATO attack. This is according to the EU Defense Commissioner. I want to read a little bit about what he said because, again, this is extremely important. Look at this right here. It says the Kremlin is discussing an attack on NATO. A European commissioner has claimed, citing German intelligence, in a wide-ranging interview on how the continent should be ready to defend itself from Russia and take a leaf out of Ukraine's book when it comes to drones. European Commissioner for Defense and Space Andris Kubilius issued a stern warning. We are seeing Europe is freaking out and have been for quite some time. But as Europe is freaking out, the United States is also looking at the situation that's currently unfolding and realizing that if Europe gets drug into a war with Russia, the United States is stepping in as well. And obviously right now is not a great time. Let's keep looking. It says right here, he told Polish Daily, I trust the secret services, and German intelligence claims it has evidence that the Kremlin is discussing an attack on NATO. And if they're discussing it, are they planning an attack? We don't know, but such signals must be taken deadly seriously. They may indeed be ready for war. We must also be ready for it and learn not only from the experiences of the Ukrainians, but also from the Russians. Okay, here's where things are getting interesting. We know that Russia is considering a potential attack on some NATO countries, but we don't know how far they're willing to go. Keep in mind that Russia, or according to reports, President Vladimir Putin was anticipating he would already be in Kyiv within like the first 5 to 7 days of the invasion of Ukraine. They haven't overtaken Kyiv. They haven't. And that right there shows that Russia was willing to take this on longer than expected. But here's the interesting thing. Russia has been partnering with other countries, like Iran. So now, not only do we have to be concerned with Russia, but we have to be concerned with Iran and Iranian proxies, like Hamas, Hezbollah, right? The Yemen Houthis, right? All Iranian proxies that we need to be well aware of and understand that they may already be in certain places. We know they're here on the side of the United States. They're probably in Europe as well. Let's keep looking at this, because here's another thing. This is just from today. It's from Business Insider. It says, a NATO ally says Russia physically pointed weaponry at its warships and helicopters in strategic waters. Russia has been doing certain things, especially lately, that are looked at as a potential conflict, okay, if you will. It looks like what Russia's doing is trying to instigate an attack by physically pointing weaponry at their NATO allies' warships and helicopters. Okay, that is there. But what about when they're flying pretty close to Alaska? Again, that's concerning. What about when we continue to see drones flying in other NATO countries? Right? We've seen them. And even though Russia says, no, those aren't ours, a lot of evidence is pointing to the fact that they are Russian drones. I want to read a little bit of this article to you. Look at this right here. It says NATO member Denmark, and again, the Denmark airport was shut down, was it a week or two ago because of drones? Yeah. It says NATO member Denmark said Russia has repeatedly threatened its warships and helicopters in various waters, including by pointing weaponry at them. It says, we have seen several incidents in the Danish Straits where Danish Air Force helicopters and naval vessels have been targeted by tracking radars and physically pointed at with weapons from Russian warships. Says the straits are strategic waters that control what enters and leaves the Baltic Sea, which is surrounded by NATO allies and Russia. The straits, which are also busy international shipping routes, would likely be key in a war. Some people said that we could see this as the turning point. If Russia were to attack in the Baltic Sea, I don't know what happens, okay? But what I do know is that there would be a response, probably from the NATO allies, but in the last resort, based off what we've been reading, is the United States would step in. The United States does not want to step in because if the U.S. steps into a conflict with Russia, that's where the world war is going to start. Because you have a lot of nations that are going to support the United States, obviously, with what's happened with Russia and Ukraine lately. You also have some countries like China and North Korea and Iran that would support Russia as well. So that's where things are getting very scary. I want to keep reading this to you, though. It says right here, Enriquel said on Friday that Russian warships had sailed on collision courses with Danish ships in the straits and that a Russian warship had been anchored in Danish waters for over a week. That ship, he said, could allow Russia to try to interfere if Denmark tried to hamper Russia's shadow fleet of tankers, which it uses to evade Western sanctions. That's the other thing that the United States and a lot of the West, obviously, we sanctioned Russia. But Russia has found ways to get around that. And there are other countries that are buying their oil. And the United States says, well, if you're going to continue to buy Russian oil, what we're going to do is we're just going to up your tariff amount. So if you want to work with them and you want to sell here in the United States, fine. But we're going to charge you just a little bit extra, which we have been doing. Goes on to say, the DDIS also said in a report on the same day that Russia is conducting hybrid warfare against NATO and the West, with actions including violating NATO airspace with drones and aircraft and cyber attacks. That's where we go back years with cyber attacks from Russia, many of which has been confirmed, but that is something that the United States is still concerned with, that we know whether it's Russia, China, or another country, there are people that have already infiltrated into our systems, and they could shut down the internet, they could shut down telecommunication, they could shut down transportation, right? They could do a whole lot of things, even disrupt our water supply. And that, again, that's going to hurt millions of people. So right now, the concern is that Russia is secretly planning this attack on NATO, and because of this, the intelligence that we're getting, a lot of people are concerned that we are stepping one step closer to this war. It looked for a while that we were really close to hitting that line where we were going to go to war, and then both countries backed off. Now it looks like we're right there again. The concern is we aren't going to back off. The United States now has a different leader, somebody that is willing to stand up for what he believes is the right move. But the right move could also be taking us to war. The problem there, here in the United States, we have a recruitment crisis where we don't have enough military personnel. And what was said by Secretary of War Pete Hegseth just last week, there's certain people in the military that may be kicked out because they don't meet our physical standards. So we'll see what happens moving forward, but that's what we know as of today. So let me know your thoughts. Do you think we're getting closer to a war, or do you think we are actually separating and we are going more towards peace? Let me know down in the comment section below. But again, thank you guys for watching. Consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys on the next one.